Okay, well, you know what? We're back. How about that? Advance Arlington is back for its 2025-2026 program cycle, and we are so excited to see you. So tonight we are going to be focused on our ranked choice voting program, which is called Your Vote, Your Voice, Understanding Ranked Choice Voting in Arlington. My name is Devanshi Patel, and I am the chair of Advance Arlington. Also, I wanted to recognize Jean Broyhill, who's our immediate past chair, and thank you, Jean. And I want to give a heartfelt thanks to each one of our board members, our sponsors, our members, our program partners. Thank you for your generosity of time, resources, and expertise. Your generosity, of course, allows us to keep these programs going. So thank you so much. And if I could just have the board members stand up so we can recognize you. So for more than, so here are some of our donors. So thank you very much. And also our program partners, Ranked Choice Virginia. Thanks, Sally, for allowing us to pivot. Challenging Racism, thank you, Mo, for allowing us to hold this community conversation on this very important topic. And thank you to Arlington County. Of course, I always want to give a special shout out to Daniel Sanchez, who always makes sure that our programs are inclusive by making sure that we have a hybrid virtual option for our friends who are unable to make it in person. Thank you so much, Daniel. So for more than 70 years, Advance Arlington has been the go-to space for tackling the big issues facing our community. Thank you, Link, for letting me know about its glorious history. Our concept is simple: conversation, not confrontation; education, not advocacy; partnership, not partisanship. We've grown with the times and the needs of Arlingtonians, but we've never strayed from our North Star: creating neutral, trusted space where neighbors can learn, engage, and shape the future together. And tonight's program reflects that mission. Ranked choice voting was implemented in Arlington in 2023. And while we do not have to agree on the method, we can explore it together: what it is, how it works, and its impact on local elections. Our goal for you is to leave with clarity, insight, and confidence as you continue to engage in civic life. As we became our Advance Arlington, we formally asked you to join the conversation. And in that spirit, and for the first time, we are leveraging technology. Oh, please cross your fingers. But we are leveraging technology in our programming, and we're bringing our invitation to you to life. So tonight you will be practicing and participating in a ranked choice voting simulation, which will guide our topic for the October 8th program. So again, a special thank you to Sally Hudson of Ranked Choice Virginia for leading the simulation. And if we would have been able to have it, thank you for thoughtfully designing your presentation, which was supposed to precede tonight's conversation. So I want you all to think of tonight as our community classroom. Your questions are important and welcome. Please do not be shy. This is a space to learn together. And on behalf of the board, it is my extreme privilege to introduce our three outstanding speakers: Gretchen Reinemeyer. She is Arlington's General Registrar and Director of Elections. Susan Cunningham, Arlington County Board Member, elected through our first implementation of ranked choice voting. And Patrick Mike Condray, he's a PhD candidate at George Mason University's Schar School of Policy and Government, and his research focuses on electoral systems. So we want you to get comfy and we want you to get ready, because it is time for us to dive in. Thank you all. Thank you very much. So Susan, here we go. You ready? I'm ready. Okay. Why did Arlington decide to adopt ranked choice voting, and what did the county board hope to achieve?
Sure. Okay, we have to share the microphone. So I was not on the board when it was adopted, so can't say with certainty, but I think the general principles of why the board is interested in it now is really threefold. One is making sure that there are more choices and there's more buy-in to the eventual outcome. So by having more than one vote, or a vote that if your first doesn't come out on top, you still have a voice in the election, that can give you more choice and very much more buy-in. So in my election, many, many more people had me somewhere on their ballot than it would have been otherwise, because not everyone had me first. The second is just civility and connection. And I would say, the political violence that again happened today is just horrific. And it's a sign of us getting to a place where we are so certain of what we think that we go to our corners. And that is not good for democracy. It's not good for humans. And so bringing some civility and some connection back in, both during the campaigns and also after you're elected, is really helpful, because I couldn't just blow off all of my my fellow candidates. And then the third one is a little tricky because it depends on how many people are running. But the idea of ranked choice, the kind of the golden egg there, is that it gives you an opportunity to have better representation of the whole community. In Arlington, it's a little tricky, and we'll get into that later, I think, about we have 3 elections that are 1 seat and then one that's 2 seat. And so you're kind of solving for different things in each of those. But those are the 3 reasons.
Okay, so Mike, we did not have our presentation earlier, so could you explain, quickly how, and simply, how ranked choice voting works compared to the traditional system?
Okay, I'll keep this simple because I'm a Texas Aggie. I'll use the Democratic Party Lieutenant Governor primary this year as an example of it. That was, of course, a plurality election. And there were 6 different candidates. One had 27.5% of the vote, another 26.5%, another 26.2%, and 3 other candidates had about 5 to 8% each. Now, in a plurality election, which that was, first past the post, the one who had the most votes wins. So the candidate that had 27.5% of the vote is on the ballot now as the Democratic Party candidate, although 72.5% of the Democratic Party electorate did not vote for that candidate. But under the plurality election system, they're the ones on the ballot, and so they're in the race. Or you never can tell with a particular race how it'll come out, but if you had a ranked choice voting election that had a similar result with 6 candidates, 27.5% is not a win, it's a good start. And what happens is first you check, did anybody get a majority of the electorate, 50% plus 1 vote? If that happens, done. That person is the candidate. If not, then the last place candidate is voted off the island. But instead of their vote, the people who voted for them dropping out, their votes are transferred to their second choice. And then you check again. After those all been reallocated, does anybody have a majority? If no, you repeat the process until somebody has 50% plus 1 of the votes. In a way, it's like a runoff election, but it's sometimes called an instant runoff voting because you do the runoff process. And that's different from the traditional runoff election that you see in a lot of states, where you have, okay, there were 2, nobody got a majority, take the top 2 candidates, and those candidates several weeks later run a completely different vote. And one of the challenges with that is you have to do all the resources, all the time, all the effort, the logistics, but also usually you have a different electorate, because usually the vote drop off from the general election to the runoff election is about 20 to 30 or more percent. And so you often have a skewed electorate, which is older, which is whiter, which is more wealthy, which is more educated, and it changes the electorate that you're drawing the majority from. Ranked choice voting, it's the same ballots you ran on the general election. Everybody who showed up for the general election, as long as they ranked their choices, they're still part of that runoff process.
So Gretchen, when voters show up to cast their ballots, what will the ranked choice voting ballot look like, and how will they mark their choices?
So this fall, when voters come to vote, they will be given, we had 6 candidates qualify for the ballot this November. That ranked choice voting, your ballot will be double-sided, and that ranked choice voting office is on the back for those in the room. There's obviously a sample ballot in front of you. Because of the system limitations of our current voting equipment, while there are 6 candidates running, and then you could also write in a candidate, you can only rank your top 3. But this has been sufficient for most general elections. So when you come in to vote, go to the back of your ballot and rank your top 3 candidates from that list of 6, or you can write in 1 if you have a write-in preference.
Susan, some Arlingtonians, some residents worry that ranked choice voting is more complicated than traditional voting. How do you address those concerns?
Yeah, I think for me, the fundamental thing is that whenever you're changing from one thing to another, we as humans resist a little, right? And so I think that's the fundamental discomfort is we've done it one way and we're doing it a different way. And in the greater sphere of this country and this time, the fact that elections are under attack kind of makes that a little bit higher anxiety. So I would name that change is really hard. And then in particular in Virginia, while we've gotten this exciting opportunity to do it for some offices, we're not able to do it even for all the local offices or for all the constitutional offices, much less for the state and the federal offices. And so that in itself can also be confusing. And then the third one, as I mentioned earlier, the fact that we have 3 years where we have, so it's only the county board that really can be done this way currently. We have 3 years where we have 1 seat up and we have 1 year where we have 2 seats up. And in an election that has a single seat, the main goal of ranked choice is to avoid extremism, which is good. But when you have multiple seats, the main goal of it is both to avoid extremism, but also to make sure all the voices are represented. Those feel really differently. And then I think through whatever rationale, and again, I wasn't here and I bet Gretchen advised against this particular timing, we started with the 2-person seat, and that was probably the hardest combination of things to go. I think it's easier. It's been easier the second and third year, and also it's always a little easier in a single seat election. But for me, I think it's the fact that it's complicated, that feels complicated, should not dissuade us, because I think the push for extremism, the push for extreme views, and then the pushing out of the diversity of voices, those are really, really important challenges in our democracy right now. And so I wish we could get all the way to where we had the power to do it everywhere. That has a whole lot of logistical challenges to it, but that's why for me personally, it feels like it's still worth pushing forward on it, even though it's a little bit confusing.
So Gretchen, Mike started our conversation with some understanding about how we count votes and results under the ranked choice voting model. I know Sally had some slides earlier about what happened in our most recent Democratic primary, and I wonder if you were able to kind of break that down a little bit for people to understand how ranked choice voting works. And if you would like for me, I can also pull up some of the first round, second round slides, if that's helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, and I apologize, I misspoke earlier. We had 5 candidates qualify, not 6. I'm looking at a write-in spot, so sorry, I'm going to correct myself. So as the rounds come up, let's see. So this is not the primary this year. This is the primary from last year. Here, the way the post-election process works in Arlington County is in order to tabulate rounds of elections, well, I need all of the votes in first. And because of various laws in Virginia's elections, we have mail ballots have until 3 days after the election to come in. And then we have this big chunk of provisional votes. So anybody who's doing a same-day registration process is casting a provisional vote that's held, and those don't actually get counted until 6 days after the election right now. So we have been doing preliminary rounds before all of the votes are in, but in order to do the final rounds, we really like to wait until all of the ballots in, and so we have to wait for those mail ballot and those provisional ballot deadlines, which are statutory deadlines set by the state. So when we do rounds, it's pretty simple. We get all of this file called a cast vote record. It's just an electronic file of how each ballot was cast in the county. We load that, pull all the files from all the voting systems, all the scanners that we use, load that into a system. and then click a button, make sure all the settings are right, and then it will tell us who won. It's a very fast process. We do try to make it public, so if anybody is interested, just pay attention to our social media and you can come. I believe you were there the first time we ran it, and it was very quick. Yep. And so, yeah, so that is how the rounds are done and a little bit of that post-election process. It does take time, but anytime you have a close election, you really have to wait until every ballot is in. And because every vote counts a little bit more in a ranked choice voting election, it's really, you have to wait until every ballot is in to really have the confidence to know exactly how that election is going to be decided.
So Gretchen, hi, my name is Sally Hudson. I lead Ranked Choice Virginia. We're a Charlottesville-based nonprofit organization that provides voter education and technical assistance in communities adopting ranked choice. I used to serve in the House of Delegates with Delegate Hope, and we carried the legislation that authorized the use of ranked choice voting in Virginia. So whether you like it or hate it, you can blame us either way. Gretchen, exactly. I get in the car and drive home. So to build on what Gretchen said, she gave a very thorough description of how exactly the counting happens from her office. Here's what's happening inside that computer when the ballots are being tallied. These are the results from last June in the Democratic primary for county board. And that familiar face on the left is county board member J.D. Spain. He was the winner of this election, and I'm going to show you how he got there. These first bars here are the first choice votes in that election. So you can see if you ask all of the voters who was their favorite candidate, these are the results that tell you what they said. You can see at the top that almost a third of the people ranked Mr. Spain first, which means he was in the lead in the first round. But more than 2/3 of the voters preferred someone else. Natalie Roy got almost 30% of the votes, Tenley Peterson got almost 1/4, and James DeVita and Julie Farnham each got more than 5% each. So this is a perfect example of an election where ranked choice voting can be powerful because there's no clear consensus of a winner after one round. So here's what's happening inside that machine that Gretchen was describing. In a ranked choice election, in each round, we knock out the lowest vote getter and transfer their support to the next choice on their ballots. So the computer says to all of those people who like Julie Farnham the best, I'm sorry, but she can't win, but we still want your voice included in deciding who represents this community. And so we want to send your vote to its next choice. These dark purple bars here are the votes that were picked up by each of the other 4 candidates from people who ranked Julie Farnham first. And you can see that each of the candidates picked up a little bit of support, but still there is no one who has the majority support level that Mike described. And so we have to keep going. In the next round, James DeVita is in last place, and so he is eliminated, and all of his supporters' votes go to their next choice. And again, you can see that all of the candidates picked up some support from people who like James DeVita. And indeed, Natalie Roy picked up the most support. So she actually pulled into the lead. There was a very tight race between J.D. Spain and Natalie Roy. And so the people who liked Tenley Peterson are going to play tiebreaker in choosing the final winner in the final round. And so Tenley is eliminated from contention. Her supporters' votes go to their next choice. And in the final round, J.D. Spain pulled into the lead with 55% of the vote. In the head-to-head election, he was the nominee and went on to the general. The beauty of this system is that all of these voters who supported Tenley Peterson or James DeVita or Julie Farnham, they got to vote their conscience. They got to support the candidate who they genuinely liked the best and still have their perspective included in the final round where the final winner was chosen. So when Susan talked about how the ranked choice process builds more buy-in, that's what she means, is that you get to have people be honest at the ballot box and be brought into a coalition to choose the final winner. Fair enough?
Okay, well, we made it happen. Thank you. So Gretchen, I have a follow-up question for you, which was pre-submitted. In the 2023 Democratic Party, primary, the Arlington used ranked choice voting to elect 2 county board members. Some voters raised concern about how the second choice preferences were factored into determining the second winner. Looking ahead, is the election board considering any adjustments to the tabulation process for future multi-winner elections to ensure clarity and fairness in how voter preferences are counted? Thank you. I know it's a long one.
No, this is a really great question. So the electoral board does not set the tabulation policies in Virginia. The tabulation rules for ranked choice voting were actually voted on by the State Board of Elections and adopted by the State Board. And there was a 4-month public process where residents of Virginia could comment on these tabulation rules. I'll also note that the statutes allowing use of ranked choice voting in Virginia specify that single transferable vote is the method to be used when more than one candidate is on the ballot. And that's a very specific tabulation method, which is what we're using here in Arlington. So I would say if you do want those changes made, you have to talk to the General Assembly or the State Board of Elections. But I do want to caution that this other tabulation method that we have seen used maybe in endorsement processes and neighboring counties processes, there is a version of ranked choice voting that operates more like a system that's preferential block voting, which is doing exactly that, is showing preference to a block of voters. That is not what the county board has wanted to do, which was do the method that showed the greatest representation of the county. So that is why this method was chosen when more than one seat is up. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Do you want to add anything?
I would just add, because I think being in that election, there was a lot of confusion, people had the question a lot, so I got a chance to try to explain it. And I think the best way you explained it to me was like, there are 2 slots for the same office that are open this year, and you get 1 full vote for how you want to fill those slots. And to the extent your first person needs 100% of that vote to make it across the line, that's where 100% will go. But in most cases, someone will get across the line with only a portion of that needed, and then the rest of it will go to your second. And so it makes sense mathematically. I think because some of the primary caucusy kinds of things had been done differently in the past, people assume they had 2 separate votes for 2 separate offices instead of a preference and a list of preferences for the office that has 2 different seats. And so that, I think we need to work on explaining that a little better. I think it would have been much easier if we had done the single seats first. So at least we got the okay, 1, 2, 3, and you can't do 1, 1, 1. But that I think, and it's also on multiple seat elections that have 6, and someone's here from Alexandria, they do all of their elections in the same year. That's going to be much, much clearer how this all works together. 2 is kind of the hardest, I think, in some ways.
Actually, so Susan, this is going to come back to you. What impact do you think ranked choice voting would have on Arlington's political culture and civic engagement long term?
So I think one of the biggest promises of it is to enable, and you saw there that, we had a time where we had 6 that year, right? And there were some folks who probably weren't going to win, but they still ran. And that conversation is really important. In other times, you would presumably have some pressure from the parties to say no, only the dark horse can win, only the best one can be in there. And that crowds out some voices and crowds out some conversations. And so for me, I think that is a promise of it, particularly if you can align it with multi-seat elections, which I know, Patrick is one of many who said maybe our 1-1-1-2 is not the best, or maybe we should just think about that again. And I think Dave Schutz is here too, saying the best combination for representation would be more seats elected at the same time plus ranked choice. We can't fix all of that. We can't change it all at one time, but I do think, the need to not dismiss people from running at all, and then to not dismiss them on the candidate list of, it mattered to me. Tony and I ran together, and it mattered to me that Tony's mom and dad were gonna get me second, right? So don't tell me if that's not true, but I was pretty sure it was. So, that builds a little camaraderie throughout it. And then again, the buy-in on the back end that, like, I know that's, Maureen and I had different people we were pulling from, but a whole heck of a lot of people had me to her second and vice versa. And that's just good to know. It helps us orient ourselves to lead once we're in office.
Gretchen, what steps are being taken to make sure voters feel confident and prepared before Election Day? Obviously, coming to the Advance Arlington presentation, but what other steps are being taken?
Yes, so I feel very fortunate to live in Arlington because I do think we have pretty high voter confidence in this community, but it doesn't mean that we don't need to remain vigilant in helping voters understand the processes for them. So we did this last year and we're doing it again. Everybody will be getting in the mail shortly a voter guide, which is just high level information about how to vote this election. So what offices are on the ballot, the early voting hours, voting by mail. And we try to be proactive in our communication. So if you are with the civic organization or a community group, please invite us to come speak. We're happy to come speak to any organization to help answer questions or concerns that people might have about their elections, either here in Arlington or across the country right now. So I know not a day goes by that there's not a news story. And just contact our office. We hope we can be that trusted partner for you in this community to answer any questions that you might have.
So I'm going to have a question for all of our panelists. What's the biggest misconception you hear about ranked choice voting, and how would you set the record straight? Mike, may I start with you?
One of the misconceptions that I've been told by people when I was doing research in Maine is this gives people more than one vote. They're getting more than one bite at the apple. It should be one person, one vote, and that should be it. And it's like, no, every individual involved in ranked choice voting has one vote, but that vote is transferred to their second or third or fourth choice during the runoff process. Again, it's more or less an instant runoff. So they still only have one person, one vote. That remains sacrosanct when going through the ranked choice voting process.
I think the biggest question that we get in the office is, do I have to vote for everything? And ranked choice voting is not like any other office. It's just like any other office on the ballot. If you do not have to vote for someone that you do not want to vote for. So if you don't want to rank 3 candidates, you do not have to rank 3 candidates. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I would say adjacent to that, there's a practice called bullet voting sometimes when there's a lot of candidates and you want to make sure that your candidate wins against somebody who's close to them. I think there's a misconception that ranked choice voting is bullet voting somehow, and that it's like manipulating, and it's really opposite to that. But because it's new, it takes a little bit of sitting with it to understand it. And so I think that's the biggest one I've heard is like, I'm only going to vote for one. It's fine. It's fine. You can. It's just if you only voted for Julie, then you were one of the 1,000 that fell out in the end, and you didn't actually get to influence the outcome.
And to that end, because your ballot, it's really important to remember, your ballot is going to stay with your first choice candidate as long as that candidate is still in the race, as long as mathematically they still have a chance of winning that election. So ranking the same person first, second, and third isn't helping increase their chances of winning because your ballot stays with their first choice candidate until that candidate is either eliminated or declared the winner. So.
And just to add one point to that, if you only put one person on the ballot, then, yes, your ballot's exhausted and you drop out. That is in effect the same as if you did not turn out for that second runoff election. You voluntarily chose not to participate in the election after your candidate was eliminated, which you can do as a voter, but that's, again, part of the process. Your vote is your choice.
Sally, may I ask you a question? What lessons or best practices can Arlington learn from other jurisdictions that already use ranked choice voting?
So I told you that I live in Charlottesville, and we are the other community in Virginia that also uses ranked choice voting in our local elections. And since we went second, we had the benefit of all sorts of best practices and lessons learned from the Arlington community. So I'll share a few of those. The first one pops right off the page of a sample ballot. You'll notice, as Gretchen said, that in Arlington, the voting systems that you have can only allow you to rank up to 3 candidates. And so if more than 3 people are running, that means that you can't rank all the candidates and express a preference over the entire field. In Charlottesville, we have voting machines that let us rank up to 6 candidates, which was plenty for us. So that's best practice number 1. You want to have a voting system, if you can, that allows voters to rank as many options as there are candidates. Voting equipment is expensive. It tends to last about a decade, and Arlington is on track to upgrade its voting systems very soon, which means that you'll get the latest and greatest models and have that best practice come to your community as well. But that's number 1. I think number 2 is something that Susan has heard from a lot of voters as well, which is that it is currently frustrating that county board is the only local office that is elected via ranked choice. And so when voters look at this sample ballot, they wonder, why am I using ranked choice for county board and something else for school board? And that's because right now that's the only office that our state law allows. And so we're counting on Delegate Hope to go back to Richmond and help us clean up that part of the state code, which would allow us to use ranked choice in more elections. And so you'd have a more consistent experience on the ballot. Another one that Gretchen touched on very briefly is that right now the State Department of Elections instructs registrars to only release complete round by round results once all of the ballots are returned, including those late arriving mail ballots. And that can make people think like ranked choice ballots take longer to count. Like that Gretchen and her staff are in some back room somewhere in the salt mines individually counting ballots. As Gretchen said, when you feed all the ballots through the machine and you run the software to count them up, it's instantaneous how the results appear. It's just an instruction from the state board that we wait till we get all of the ballots. A best practice that is used in other jurisdictions that use ranked choice, like Portland, Oregon, is that you treat ranked choice results like any other election, and you put out preliminary results on election night. And in a very close race, if some more ballots come in after the election because they're late coming through the mail, it's possible that the results could change. But if the results are clear on election night, you have them right away. So that's something Virginia could do as well, is stop treating ranked choice like it's different than any other election, and then just put out all the round by round results on election night. And then the last one that I would suggest, I think this is something that we really learned from Arlington as well, is that it's so important that you invest in voter education, because ranked choice is all about empowering voters. And so if voters don't know how the process works, then they can't really feel like they're having their voice heard. And that's why we do programming like this. It's also why we're going to do a little practice. You all have been very patient while we've been talking. And so we are going to go ahead and run a little ranked choice race right now.
So, as I said, first time ever that we are using technology to guide our next programming. So what you see up here now is 5 topics. We are looking to you to tell us what you want to hear next. And we are going to use what we've learned tonight about ranked choice voting. So we're going to ask you we're going to put up a QR code, and Sally's going to walk us through that. But these are the topics. So here are your here are your topics running for October. The cost of living crunch, housing and affordability in Arlington. This program would be exploring how rising housing costs, rental pressures, and limited affordable options affecting Arlington residents, and what solutions are being explored. The second one is reimagining Arlington's built environment, from vacant offices to community spaces. So how can Arlington transform empty offices into housing, community hubs, and other spaces that meet the county's evolving needs? The price of care, elder care, and the care economy, including childcare. How can families and policymakers address rising costs and limited access to childcare and elder care in Arlington? Our fourth choice is transportation and population growth. Is Arlington's infrastructure keeping up? How is Arlington adapting its transportation system to meet the demands of a growing population and evolving mobility needs? And finally, who decides Arlington's future? Boards, commissions, and civic voice. Who has a seat at the table in Arlington's local decision-making? And how can residents engage meaningfully in shaping county policies? And before we run this simulation, I want to thank Cynthia here for helping us today. She is doing a magnificent job. by yourself. Thank you, Cynthia.
So we told you that ranked choice voting is all about building buy-in, and that is true whether you are trying to pick a politician to fill an office or you're trying to come to a consensus as a group about a decision that you need to make. Oh, pardon me. And so, as Devanshi said, we're going to run a little ranked choice poll right now and decide what this group believes should be the topic of the next Advance Arlington presentation. So as many of you have already intuited, you can scan that QR code with your phone, pull up your camera app, focus it on that square and push the URL that should pop up, and it should help you arrive at a ballot with these 5 options on it. Can I see?
We've already done that. Do it again.
Oh, no, one person, one vote. I appreciate it. So you should see then all 5 options on your ballot, and we've set these ballots up to look just like they do in Arlington, so you can rank your top 3. Pick your 3 favorite options for the next topic of the Advanced Arlington series, and we will go ahead and look at the results together. Does anybody need a moment to finish choosing? I will be patient.
Strategy.
You know what I can do? I can be flexible.
Are people voting online?
Yes, has everybody voted?
Online?
Does someone here still need it? Okay. So everybody had a chance to scan their ballot?
Jean, did you get your vote? Okay.
We still waiting for anybody to chime in? Shall we go? Okay, if you have already pulled up the preliminary results, I will ask you to refresh your page so you're looking at the same results that I have. Does everybody who's looking at results on their phone have 37 voters? Because that's what I've got. Try refreshing that page. So these are ranked choice results being counted in real time, and you can see round by round how we determine the winner. In the first round, affordable housing was the far and away favorite. Let's go back. In round 1, affordable housing got 14 of the votes, which is the favorite, but still less than half. And so transportation is in last place. The people who rank transportation first have to be told, I'm sorry, but you can't have your favorite. So the transportation people have their vote go to their next choice. It looks like the transportation people liked affordable housing next and the care economy. And this is something that happens when you have very few votes, is that you can get exact ties in a round. So notice there how civic voice, care economy, and office conversions are exactly tied. You all didn't produce results that are especially easy to explain with this few votes. This software that we use will choose one of the losers at random in the case that there was a tie like this, which is exactly how it happens in Virginia if there is a genuine tie in an election. If you've never experienced this before, we do sometimes have races that come down to an exact tie, and the winner is chosen at random from a bowl. In 2017, my former seatmate, Shelley Simons, lost an election because she came in an exact tie, and her name was put in a film canister and inside of a bowl, and they pulled out the winner, and it wasn't her. And so she had to run again 2 years later in order to be selected. Every once in a while, we would leave a film canister on her desk as just a reminder of how far she came to get here. So that's what's going to happen here. This is more realistic than you might think. They're going to pick one of the candidates at random to be our loser, and it's office conversions. Office conversions can't win. So if your favorite was office conversions, your vote went to your next choice. And now you can see that affordable housing has become the majority favorite. With 20 votes to 9 to 8, affordable housing is going to be the topic of Advance Arlington's next series. So here's the point of doing all of this. Ranked choice voting can sound a little complicated in the abstract when you're talking about all of the details, but you all pulled up a ballot right away, chose your favorite options, and we counted the ballots in real time. That's how fast it can happen in a real election too.
Well, give yourselves a round of applause. Thank you for choosing our next topic. I know every single member of this board is excited to know what it is that we're going to bring forward on October 8th. So we are going to turn to, remember I said this is our community classroom, so we are going to turn to questions. Does anybody have a question? So I'm just going to walk around with the mic, back and forth, back and forth.
Thank you. So if we were voting for two programs, would it be the top two, the civic voice and affordable housing? Is that the way that would work?
Are you making a pitch for it?
No.
Listen, these are all topics that we're exploring. And in addition to ranked choice voting tonight, we actually have a community input survey that's on our newsletter. It's on our website. We want to hear from you. Remember, these are conversations that that are driven by the community input. So yes, it could be. It could be coming up in this program cycle. Oh, I see what you're asking about for not this, but Arlington. So Sally, what would, oh yeah.
And interestingly, on our survey so far, affordable housing is by far the most one of the things people wanted to address. So could you say it on the mic because the people were looking at us?
Sure. So this sounds like this was not surprising to the board of Advance Arlington that affordable housing came out ahead in this pool of voters this evening because you also have a survey. You're doing a survey. Okay. So Susan talked about this briefly, but in a ranked choice election with more than one winner, the number of votes that it takes to win changes. And here's why. When you're only picking one winner, you need to get at least half the votes because only one person can get more than half. Once somebody has more than half the votes, even if all the other voters came together in support of another candidate, nobody could catch up to the favorite. We can apply that same logic to a race with more than one winner. So in a race with two winners, each winner needs to get more than a third of the votes because only two people can have more than a third. Once two people have more than a third, everybody else must have less than they do. So in this case, if we eyeball it, a third of 36 is 12. So if somebody had 13 votes, that would be enough to win the first seat in a ranked choice election with two winners. So that means that affordable housing would have won back at this point. When affordable housing got 14 votes, it would have more votes than it needed to win the first seat. And the other four candidates would compete to fill the second seat. And we would continue the runoff process to find the other candidate that has 13 or more votes.
So second choice. Oh, hold on, let me bring it back to you.
So would you look at the second choice of those voters for affordable housing, or do they not get to feed into the second seat?
Great question. So Susan talked about this as well. Everybody only gets one vote, one whole vote. So you can think of your vote like a dollar bill. In the first round, everybody gives their dollar to their favorite candidate. And pardon me, teachers like to walk to the middle of the room. In my day job, I teach at UVA. So everybody's got a dollar to spend in this election, and you all give your dollar bill to your favorite candidate. If your favorite gets more support than they need to win, then you get change back and you get to spend your change on your second choice. So in this case, the voters who supported affordable housing get a little bit of change back. There are 14 votes and they only needed 13 to win. And so all of those voters are going to get a share of that extra vote back, and their extra vote goes to their second choice candidate. So it won't be all 14 of them because then they'd be getting to vote twice. But the extra votes that affordable housing didn't need to secure the seat will be redistributed as well. The goal is to ensure that everybody gets one vote, one person, one vote, and nobody gets a stronger vote than anybody else. Yeah.
So Sally, what happens then if you have multiple people on a multiple party election that are tied after the first one is done, right? So like in this particular situation, let's say civic voice, office conversions, care economy, we're all tied at 7, forget transportation. Then what happens there?
So we have only ever had one multi-winner election in Virginia, and you all did us the courtesy of not tying. So I'm speculating here, but I would imagine that the state code would still suggest that you would break the tie at random and you would decide which candidate was eliminated. The good news is when you have tens of thousands of people voting in Arlington County, the chances of having a literal tie are next to zero. So the ties only happen when you have a relatively small number of people voting, and that's just the luck of the draw sometimes.
Gretchen,
Gretchen can answer this better, but doesn't the reallocation of the surplus, the fact that you get some change back, mean you're quickly not using a whole vote? And so the odds of it being tied go away.
Yes, yeah, that's correct. So if it did end in a tie, the first thing you would do in this scenario is you'd figure out how much change there's left over in affordable housing and reallocate that. And mathematically, the chance of that ending in a tie, just the probability of that reduces even further. Yes.
Hi, Mike Campbell. I'm going to put our 2 elected leaders on the spot here. So, as you made the ordinances or you allowed for ranked choice voting, you started with primaries, and then fortunately, eventually, you made it to the general election where earlier this year you said we're gonna do ranked choice voting for the general election. That's on a 1-year time. So where are you leaning on that? And then for our other elected leader, do you think it's more fair to only allow ranked choice voting for primaries, or should it be primaries and the general election? Yeah, okay, whoever wants to answer.
It is up to the locality to decide.
Well, they offer.
okay, so, okay.
The whole law is permissive for localities to decide, so they can choose to use it or not use it, in which manner and fashion to do. Oh, well, that's something we'd have to discuss. That's a General Assembly decision.
I advocate for that.
Okay, so just for our viewers at home, the conversation is Mike is advocating for other offices as well. But here's Susan's question.
Can you say the question again? Because I was so interested in Patrick's answer. Got it. Thank you. Yeah, the question was, this year we've elected to do an extended pilot where the general election is also going to be ranked choice. I think that part of why we're having this conversation and sort of asking our community partners to do more education is not everyone's sure about this yet, right? And so we need to, as a community, let it percolate a little bit and get some additional feedback. And then quite soon, we're going to need to have the conversation about the multi-seats again, right? And so I could see some pressure to not allow it in multi-seat. I personally feel like multi-seat ranked choice and getting all voices and representation is what will preserve democracy. So I personally would feel pretty strongly about that. I can't say where the community will be or where my colleagues will be, but I think Tony knows the answer because he's got a question.
Oh, go ahead, Mike. Sorry.
I can't speak for Arlington or others, but I can, from a research perspective, when you want to implement ranked choice voting because you're interested in the effects of ranked choice voting as requiring people to cooperate as groups. This is a blinding flash of the obvious, but if you only have two candidates in the general election, ranked choice voting and plurality elections are identical. There is no change in how it will be run or how it will be done. So one of the things is in a primary, you will usually see more than two candidates in an election. If you want these effects to be seen in a general election, you need to have more than two candidates in the general election.
Okay, and Tony?
You had a question about like fractional wins or ties. So say you had a scenario where two candidates had fractionally like the same number, but one had a higher like point than another. Do you have to win by one entire vote before like the round of elimination happens? Like if you had 10 votes, 10.5 or 10.4, do you eliminate the 10.4? How does that work?
Gretchen, is this for you? Okay.
Yeah, so in that case, it would be the fractions, that's the change. So that the fractions only exist when you're electing more than one candidate, and that's the change that Sally spoke about. So once again, it's the lowest vote getter. So that 10.4 is below 10.5. So that's the candidate that gets eliminated. We don't round, there are certain cases where you disregard everything after the decimal point, but that's when you hit the threshold. So like in this scenario of the 37 votes, so that is 12 point something, 12.3, you're disregarding the 0.3. So they only need to get 12 votes to actually be the winner. But in the tie scenario, but once again, I think it's really important to remember that Arlington County has 165,000 actively registered voters. The fact that we would end in a tie, like statistically speaking, is rare. And certainly not something.
Thank you. Yes. Did you?
How many of the candidates that got the most votes on the first round ultimately won?
Is that for like everywhere or just in Arlington? Okay.
Most of the time in a ranked choice voting election, the person that starts out ahead stays ahead. Most of the time. Very famously in Maine, in 2018, Jared Golden was behind Bruce Poliquin in the first round of the election, but two independent candidates were also running. And the vast majority of the independent candidates as their second choice backed Jared Golden. And so he had what is sometimes referred to as a come from behind victory, in the sense where because he was the second choice of those other candidates, for the voters who voted for that other candidates, he ended up winning that election. And so that was the US House of Representatives, and he's still there.
Same thing in Alaska.
And I think it's really important to note that just because the candidate with the most first choice votes won, doesn't mean ranked choice voting didn't matter at all, because ranked choice can affect who decides to run. So as Susan said, you can get more voices in the mix and therefore more perspectives heard, and it can affect how the candidates run. So once they're using ranked choice, candidates can position themselves differently to appeal to different sets of the electorate. And as Susan has seen, they often treat each other better on the campaign trail. And so the process of an election can be improved even if the outcome doesn't change. I don't know how many of you watch closely the ranked choice election for mayor in New York City, but two of the top candidates ran very closely together, and their campaign ads were downright endearing because they were instructing each other's supporters to rank one of them first and one of them second, and acknowledging what they had in common. And so if you're looking for a voting process that encourages candidates to acknowledge what they have in common instead of just tearing each other's down, ranked choice can improve the political process. Even in any one election, it doesn't change the outcome.
Gretchen, you wanted to get in on this? Okay. They.
Another example of a candidate who won, who did not come in in the election, in the first place votes, is Jean Quan for mayor of Oakland in 2010. That's an extremely interesting election. It's the stories of it on the Bay Area Press are all available on the internet. And I recommend that people look it up.
Okay, we have two more questions.
We also had a come from behind, if you want to use that language, election here with Natalie Roy getting one of the two slots in the first round of voting. But as we went through the runoffs, Maureen Coffey then came, if you want to say, came from behind and got the second seat. Was she?
Yeah.
Fine.
I'm gonna bring you the mic just so our friends at
Use of the mic is important for those watching online. So just to make the point, so in that first time that we used ranked choice voting with the vote for two, Maureen Coffey came in third after the first round of votes, but she was actually the first one to cross the threshold, so.
Okay, so we have two last questions.
Thanks all. I have a question as somebody who's had a lot of conversations with people about ranked choice voting and done advocacy for ranked choice voting. And so I'm curious to get the perspective of some of the folks up here tonight on how you would respond to a common concern that I've heard voiced about ranked choice voting, which is, and I think Susan touched on this earlier, is this time that we're living in where people have a lot of skepticism and mistrust and feeling like elections are less sacred than they have been. What do you say to people who have concerns over transparency and the ability to hand count and that kind of thing? And, you know, those who feel like, if I can't see every single ballot and count it by hand myself, not that they would necessarily, but you get my point. So what would your response be to that?
I think this was to you. Yes.
It may be both, or maybe all of us, but yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple layers. So specifically in Virginia, I do hope that we will get to where the full data file or more of the full data file can be shared. So right now it's a little unsatisfying. And I think I saw Audrey here earlier. She's pointed out it's unsatisfying that we could see how it happened, but we couldn't go back and say how many had exactly the ranking of Natalie, JD, Susan, Maureen, you know, and so people want data, and to the extent that we can have it be more transparent, I think that will help at least some of the nerdier folks amongst us, of which there are many in Arlington. So I think that's the main case that I would point out. In terms of transparency overall, I think the piece I've heard most is, are there particular language speakers or particular categories of diversity that may have a harder time with it? And I think that's one of the things we're asking in this conversation. Gretchen did some good data analysis that seemed to suggest that at least at a precinct level, which doesn't get you all of that data because we don't check who voted which way, but at the precinct level, it was pretty consistent who had a spoiled, you know, the percentage of spoiled ballots on the school board election versus the county board election, which seems to suggest it wasn't more confusing. But I think that's something we're listening for, not even the actual existence of that, but the perception that that could exist, because that in the grander scheme of things is not helpful.
The first thing I say to most election skeptics is come work at the polls. Our democracy is not a spectator sport. We need poll workers, get your hands dirty, let's get in there. We definitely, it's the amount of detail and care that we do into each election. Most people just don't know. And so the best way to learn is to get up at 5 a.m. and get to your polling location and help out on election day. And see how some of the process works.
And I would add to that, because in one of my other lives, I am an election officer in Prince William County. And so, you know, one part of the thing speaking to that question is the reason that we have a paper ballot record is so there will be very close elections. There will be processes where the order that a candidate is eliminated can matter. And so the way to make sure that that transparency exists at the end is to make sure you have a record so that you can recreate if necessary, both with documented and with the electronics, and match them up to make sure that everybody can see this is how it played out.
Do you guys have time for one more question? Okay, wonderful. It's a trick.
Well, going back to legislation, county board, will you be preparing a agenda for the delegates and senators? And will that include expanding ranked choice voting to maybe school board and constitutional officers?
Yeah, it's very.
Oh.
Yes, it's a very good question. We absolutely will have a legislative agenda that our delegation will read carefully and honor, no doubt. That is in formulation. It usually kind of comes to the public light in November. I don't remember, it's a little bit of a dance right there in November because Gretchen's got kind of a lot of things going on for the first week. So it may be there'll be like a placeholder in there, but the results of what we see in this election and what we hear in this education may still be evolving a little bit for the month or two. So we'll keep in touch, but there'll probably be a marker in there. And we've talked about it. We know that it would be easier, the faster we can get to more elections where it's permissive for the locality to choose that, probably the better.
Okay, so thank you very much. If David, does everybody, we're gonna do one more, okay? One more.
This is more of an announcement than a question, but there is going to be a legislative agenda from the Civic Federation, as there was last year. It'll be very similar to last year's Civic Federation agenda. And we'll ask the county board both to back Patrick Hope's bill and for these wider authorities on how to do ranked choice voting. But
Okay.
we're still in the process.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, so, wow, how wonderful. Thank you to all of our presenters, Sally, Mike, Gretchen, and Susan. Thank you so much for such an exciting conversation. Again, thank you to our board members, our sponsors, our members, our program partners. If you are not a member of Advance Arlington, I would be remiss in saying, please join our membership and join the conversation faithfully every month, except we're off in December and the summer months. And I want to thank each and every one of you here for your curiosity, for your questions, for your participation. Thank you for a wonderful evening. And what a great way to start off our program year. So we look forward to seeing all of your beautiful faces back here on October 8th when we explore the cost of living crunch, housing affordability in Arlington. Thank you so much. Good night, everyone. Oh, wait. And now, don't go anywhere because Mo is giving me the look. As Susan mentioned, the county is super interested in being able to do robust conversations and programming so that, we can reach as many voters as possible, and also helping to, kind of understand how the education and the messaging is getting out. And so our partner, Challenging Racism, will be sending each of you a short, emphasis on short, survey for tonight's program. So we ask that you complete the survey and provide, again, community input. It will be reviewed by our county partners. But listen, in the spirit of surveys, you can also do ours as well. Okay, so thank you. Have a great night.